or so?
Sure, go on.
Okay. All right. So I don't have a prepared PowerPoint. I have some thoughts about some things that I've been thinking about and working on, and I hope that I have something of value to contribute to the conversation that's being had today. Um, so I'm interested in human behavior, and I am interested in for, I'm interested in human behavior for a number of reasons, but two important reasons why I focus on human behavior in my research has to do with one, the ways in which people have tried to explain human behavior, particularly those explanations that seek to give an evolutionary framing for human behavior. I'm interested in that for the many ways that I think that project is is wrongheaded. I think that there's something problematic about that project. Uh, but the other reason why I'm interested in human behavior, I am interested in it because there's a great deal of ways in which we live our lives. So the degree to which we're flexible to do very different things, I find fascinating. Um, what I will be talking about today, however, will focus more on the problems in attempting to give an evolutionary account of human behavior. So I take it that most people listening or who will be watching this uh, understand that there is a sense in which we human beings are animals like the others. And we're just really, if you like, a fancier version of animals. We are different from, but we share some things with the bonobos and the chimpanzees and the cats and the dogs. We have this fancy machine. We have interests, we have goals, we pursue our lives, we want certain outcomes, etc., etc. But we are animals. At bottom, there's something about us that renders us members of the animal kingdom. So I'm not uncomfortable, nor do I disagree with anyone who say that human beings are a kind of animal. And if you give a biological explanation for the other animals, then you should be open to wanting to give a biological explanation for the ways in which human beings behave. Darwin, for instance, in his 1859 on the Origin, proclaimed that in the future uh, there will be a psychological story that is woven or is based in evolutionary theory, right? So he saw psychology in the future when he was speaking uh, um, as somehow finding home in evolutionary theory, that our psychological explanations will not just look out in the world and see what we do as human beings disconnected from our biology, but that the evolutionary story will have some import, some importance, some role to play in the story we tell about our psychological proclivities and therefore our behaviors. So Darwin foresaw psychology being entangled with biology. But you see, Darwin didn't give us any roadmap. He didn't say that psychology will look a particular way. He didn't say that we will explain human behavior by making claims about particular genes or genes causing us to behave in a certain way. And no respectable biologist should want to say anything like that. Nonetheless, the thought is if we go for, and we should want to go for, really valuable, really truthful, really objective explanation of who we are as animals, what makes us behave in the ways in which we behave, then evolution needs to have some role in that story. And the way in which evolution has had a role in that story uh, typically is that uh, there are ways we behave in the contemporary world, there are ways contemporary human beings behave because early humans, our ancestors, behave in certain way, and we have inherited genetically the suites of genes that underpin the ways in which they behaved, right? So the story goes something roughly like that. And I'm inclined to say that that story just won't work for a number of reasons. We should grant that my raising my arm has to do with the fact that I'm made of proteins, that I have the requisite, the required cognitive and morphological structure, that my cortex is functioning the way it's supposed to function, that I have thoughts and desires and preferences, and my motor skills ultimately are brought to bear on my raising my arm. We could give a biological story of that. We shouldn't want to deny that. But the sorts of explanations that we typically get about human behavior are explanations that are not about the movements of body. They're not behaviorist kind of explanations. They're explanations that is supposed to tell us something like the reasons for our behavior, the reasons for our behavior. So mating preferences, xenophobia, uh, uh, the certain proclivities that men are apt to have when they're looking for mates and women are apt to have when they're looking for mates, the desire to procreate, et cetera, et cetera. These are the sorts of things, the sorts of behaviors when we behave in these ways that people believe should be given biological evolutionary account. And when we do that, those stories are supposed to be truer, they're supposed to be objective, they're supposed to tell us something about our very nature. Now, one reason why I'm off the bus, so to speak, that I disagree with those accounts is I think that although evolution and biology has given us a brain to think and to have desires, the particular reasons that we have desires are reasons for us and reasons that are reasons that have to do with the particular places we are in our lives, the context of our lives, the culture in which we live, the resources that are available to us, and the like. So when I think about I'm hearing an echo from from David's room. David, can you turn your sound down, David?
Mhm.
We're in the same house and I can hear myself. Turn your sound down, please. Thank you. When I think about the reasons we live our lives, the reasons we behave as we do in our lives, I don't think that those reasons have anything at all to do with our biological origins in the sense that we're behaving in this way because our ancestors behaved in that way. I am not doing what my ancestors did because they did certain things a certain way. Rather, I have preferences that are internal to Sabrina for Sabrina's reasons. And you give an explanation of my reasons for action by looking at the context of my life. So that explanation is going to be close to me. If you believe a biological story is needed to add some extra something to it, the biological story is going to be something like, I have a brain and the brain is a product of evolution. But everybody knew that. I didn't, and I don't deny that that's the case. The question is, how is my brain functioning in the here and now for the purposes that I have for my life, for the desires that I have for my life, for the goals that I have for my life? And so when I think about what a biological story will look like, it's a biological story that is very general. Evolution has something to do with who we are as animals, but the biological story stops in this evolutionary sense. And instead, we need to look at the facts of my life, what I want to accomplish, the culture I live in, and therefore the constraints that are imposed on me based on my culture, the norms that I have developed, so the ways of thinking, what kinds of desires are not appropriate for me to have given my surroundings, what kinds of goals can I pursue given the available resources that I have. That kind of explanation is richer, it's fuller, it makes sense of my life, it makes sense of other people's lives. And we end up with a very, very dappled explanatory framework where human beings all over the planet have very different lives for the reasons they have those lives. And when we try to make sense of their lives in the context of where they're living, the picture is not just one of straight up evolution, but it's evolution has provided us with the resources to think novel, creative, out of the ordinary thoughts, have out of the ordinary desires and preferences, and bringing to fruition the ways in which we want to live our lives. To my mind, such a story is a richer story. It's a story that captures the spirit and the facts of biological evolution. Because one of the things that Darwin was very interested in us taking to heart was variation. 3 chapters in On the Origin is devoted to variation. And the reason for that is because Darwin recognized that animals, organisms, once you're packaged biologically, the story is not completed. That animals finding themselves in very, 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 very different situations will do interesting things with what they have, right? And so you have relationships that seemingly are not typical in nature. So how often do we find animal groupings that are not normal? So we find a lion who is friendly with, I don't know, a dog or a chicken, when the lion should be treating the dog or a chicken as food. And you say, well, how should that be? Because in nature, the animal, the lion, is supposed to consume them. And yet we have these couplings that are antithetical to the natural order of things. It's not typical that that's the case, but we do find these weird situations sometimes. So the fact of variation is important for biological evolution. It is because organisms are not genetically the same, behaviorally the same, morphologically the same, why we have the continuation of evolution. And since that's the case in the non-human organismal world, then we should also expect it to be the case in the human world, right? So we have different cultures. I mean, I'm talking to you, you're in Iran, I'm in the United States, and we have lives that are in some important respects are very different. There are also similarities, right? So we desire to care for our families. We desire to consume foods that will keep us alive and be healthy for us. But we end up eating very different dishes. We end up deciding that the ways in which we care for our families are different. So in the United States, it might not be the case that you can spank your children. Certainly, I'm from Jamaica, and the last time I checked, you could spank your children in Jamaica, and that's a way to care for them, right? So they're very different ways of organizing ourselves, divisions of labor between the sexes, whether children are given certain jobs in the family or not, whether certain jobs are appropriate for male children, whether certain jobs are appropriate for female children. These are different ways of living lives. And nonetheless, we continue as a species. We haven't gotten away with ourselves by living these different ways. All of these varied patterns help us to continue the business of living. We shouldn't desire to be the same. We shouldn't desire to have the same patterns of living. I think it is a benefit. It's a cultural benefit. It's a psychological benefit. It's a behavioral benefit. And ultimately, we will get a feedback loop where it's going to be a biological evolutionary benefit that we're not all the same. So my motivation for thinking that an evolutionary story is not appropriate for what we care about is not just because, well, it might render, for instance, that women have babies and they stay home and take care of the children. That's not my reason for it. First of all, biology doesn't say that. Human beings in societies decide that. But my reason for not wanting a biological story is that evolution is going to take us so far explicitly. And then other features, developmental processes, have to be receptive to the contingencies that we meet in life. And when developmental processes meet those contingencies, it ends up producing novel ways of being, novel products, which is a benefit in the end to the evolutionary story. So it's not the case, contrary to what some people think, based on my article, Is Evolutionary Psychology Possible? I don't think it is possible. But some people have thought that I think that evolution stops at the neck. And this has to do, all of what we do has to do with our culture. No, evolution has given us this organ, this system, but this system is flexible, it is malleable, it allows us to do really creative stuff. And that, I submit, is the genius, not only of Darwin's original account, but it's really the genius of the biological evolutionary processes themselves. So I hope I've said something of benefit. I hope that my ideas is of utility for people thinking about how do we think about human beings and evolution. It's not the case that I think evolution has nothing to do with it, but the ways in which evolution has something to do with it and us is something that we have to be very careful about how we formulate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sabrina. I jealous نسبت بهشون بگید که به شاگرداشون حسودی میکنن.
She says that she's so jealous of your students.
Oh,
because of your teaching way is very exciting. It's very, I don't know,
yeah,
absorbing, very bad.
I live in this space. I am I get alive. I am excited with us
Yes.
thinking carefully and
Yes.
seriously about these matters, because these matters are important, right? We
Yes.
are interested in these questions, and how we address them is very, very important.
Yes.
So yes, I come
Yes.
alive when I teach.
Thank you very much. It's very good. It was very good. به زحمت شما بهشون بگید.
David has just reminded me that it is the case that sometimes we eat the same thing. So we've just 2 nights ago had the last of this most recent version of korma sapsi.
Yes, it was very بهشون بگید که این مهمون نوازی آقای پروفسور روس و خانمشون بود که غذای ایرانی گذاشتن 2 روز قبل از مصاحبه ما. بله بهشون بگید پروفسور اسمی و خودشون.
So she said that you were it was hospitality of you to serve Iranian food just 2 nights before having a conversation with Iranian fellows. So she saw the picture on your Facebook and she considered it as well.
Yes.
Her daughter has made a clip about Iran, and she has decided to put the picture of your korma sabzi in that video clip. Because of you.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. Thank you very much. It was very good and it was a very good experience. And also your attitudes and views are very important to me because you have a different side of the matter and you speak a different side of the matter. And حالا من دیگه بقیه‌اش نمیتونم قشنگ بگم، شما بگو دیگه.
So please, a heartfelt thank you for your warm words and very nice point of view and perspective on this matter, and your brilliant presentation. So warm, kindly, understandable, and thought-provoking. So she says you're very intelligent.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so this is the end of the event. So we have to say goodbye to everyone.
Okay. Thank you, and good luck. Nice to meet everyone. Bye.
من میخواستم تشکر کنم از پروفسور اسمیت، خانم دکتر اسمیت، خانم دکتر راد، خانم دکتر روحانی، آقای پروفسور روس هم که قبلش در خدمتشون بودیم. خیلی تشکر کنم. انشالله که بتونیم به هر حال یه قدم کوچیکی برداشته باشیم برای کسانی که علاقه‌مند این موضوعات هستن. من که خودم خیلی دوست داشتم بحث امروزمون رو. انشالله که بقیه هم به هر حال حالا حداقل اگه به اندازه ما نباشه بالاخره یه درصدیشو لذت برده باشن. خیلی هم ممنون از آقای سرا. بفرمایید شما.
So she would like to thank all the guests, Professor Rus, and then Dr. Rouhani and Dr. Rod for their presentation, and then Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And she hopes that it will be a good beginning. She enjoyed the conversation and hope that everyone who watched and listened to it enjoyed it as well. And hopefully it will continue in the future. Film به صورت فارسی و انگلیسی توی سایت خواهد بود. So the video will be available in Persian and English with subtitles in Fujan's website. Thank you everyone. Bye.
تشکر میکنم خانم دکتر، ممنون زحمت کشیده.